Welcome to the Therapist Uncut podcast, where off-the-clock therapists who happen to be friends share their uncensored thoughts about real life. Join us weekly in spreading positivity and making mental health relatable through casual conversation, inspirational stories, and real talk with friends who happen to be therapists. Please welcome your co-hosts, Nikki Young and Alyssa Najera.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Therapist Uncut. I'm here.
T Uncut, TU crew.
TU crew. I'm Nikki Young, here with my fantastic, as always, co-host Alyssa Najera.
Hello.
Hello. Now, we got some feedback from our fantastic listeners that y'all really enjoyed our, expose episode on the levels of anxiety that Alyssa and I both manage as highly successful, that sounded narcissistic, as successful individuals, professionals in the community. So we are making it a little bit more relatable again today in this episode. We are talking about, it's kind of, the topic's going to flow today, but we're talking about impulsivity, delayed gratification, or lack thereof. We're going to keep it real.
You know what's amazing is that because I will rewatch these episodes, right? We want to get better, and I've rewatched the last episode of Confessions of a High-Functioning Anxious Therapist, and my camera presence was all fucked up. And I was like, what is wrong with me? I know how to be on camera, but because of the topic we were talking about, like, I couldn't breathe, I was fidgeting, I was like, avoiding eye contact with the camera. It was so difficult, so I hope today I can be a little more present for you guys.
See, I had a different experience because, and Alyssa knows this and our team knows this, that historically I had some major imposter syndrome around this podcast. I 100% agree. I watched the episode so I could learn and all of that, but I was so uncomfortable and embarrassed about my presentation and what I said and didn't say, yada, yada. I have overcome that significantly in the last year and done a lot of work around that. And also, Alyssa's just freaking fantastic, so it's easy to be proud of this now. But I watched that episode and I'm giggling to myself because I had my headphones in and my wife looks at me because she didn't know what I was listening to. And I go, we're kind of funny. We're kind of good. So I'm making progress on that. So that's interesting that you felt uncomfortable because I was like, we're good.
I was so uncomfortable. And I could even feel it right now. My heartbeat is going up because I know the topic we're talking about. And today we're not talking about like everybody else struggling with this. We're talking about ourselves again because we did hear you when you guys said it made it that much more relatable when you have a therapist talking about how mental health shows up in our lives and how it's kind of like screwing with us on a daily basis and how we have to maintain it and take care of our mental health.
And I feel like the background to how we came to this topic is kind of funny too, because we were sharing with our team, aka our spouses, that listeners appeared to really enjoy that episode. And so we said, okay guys, what else do we struggle with? And they both immediately were very apt to give us some feedback. So
in the most polite way.
Yes, very lovingly.
Today we're circling around. We say squirrel so hard all the time, right? Because we think it's funny and we get distracted sometimes. And sometimes you get distracted and we just kind of go on tangents. Well, the squirreling so hard is really the inspiration of this episode because we're going to be talking more about impulsivity and our own difficulties with delayed gratification, attention issues. Yeah. This is going to be all over today, but we're going to try to keep it centered.
Oh, how fitting. It's going to be all over talking about it.
All over. Okay, where do you want to start, Nikki?
I would like to start with... That's a good question. Okay, so if we think about impulsivity and difficulties with delayed gratification, there's ends of the spectrum, right? So there's individuals who this is not a thing, they never have to manage this. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum where it gets somebody into some significant trouble, right? Whether it be financial, significant debt, whether it be legal trouble, there's an end of the spectrum. I think we are going to be kind of centered in the middle there, talking about how it affects us on a I don't know if daily basis is accurate. I think that's part of what we're going to talk about. But it's not the crazy stories that you hear about, right, where it got somebody into trouble. It's the day-to-day stuff where you can still be successful, still have a functioning life, and also this is a thing.
It's definitely a thing.
Yeah. So as far as I know, Alyssa's not been arrested for anything related to impulsivity or delayed gratification. I know I have not. However,
I really was thinking about that. As far as I know as well, I have not been incarcerated for anything resulting from high impulsivity.
From something else? Just kidding. What it does really affect regularly is my haircut. Because that is probably...
Wait, can I tell a story?
Yeah.
Here's the story. I went to Nikki and Stacy's wedding. So if you are new to the podcast, Stacy is also our executive director. Yes, executive director.
She's right off screen.
She is here with us every time to make sure we come back and we're doing what we need to do on camera. Also,
she brings the squirrels back into alignment.
She does. So when we were at the wedding, there was a story from, I don't know, maid of honor, friend of honor. I'm not sure who it was, but the way this person described Nikki was, I think of Nikki in phases based on Nikki's haircut. Because Nikki's haircut would change depending on which direction she was going in her life at any given moment. And I was like, tell me more. What? So it was a great speech.
This was their maid of honor speech, was relating the different stages of my life to my different haircuts.
So how does that relate to impulsivity?
Well, right. So this is a really, really interesting thing to think about, actually, because this is a thing. It relates to gratification. And I think so COVID was really bad for my hair because there was not a lot of stimulation during COVID, right? There was a lot of monotony, and I really thrive on spontaneity, and there just wasn't a ton of that through lockdowns. So I took it out on my hair. So when it was 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I am just, I would really prefer to be going out to dinner or something like that, I would pull out my clippers. Now, each time it came out terrible. There was one haircut that I gave myself that my wife is making an emphasis off camera, that it was only one time that I managed to do a decent job and actually got some compliments on it from people who did not know I cut it myself. However, every time I was convinced that this will be different. I'll figure it out this time. And I would cut my own hair, and it was always a disaster. So to update to the hair stages, I am currently growing out a modern mullet, which is very interesting because talk about delayed gratification. Holy crap, it's not growing very quickly. So I might just give up and cut it off here shortly. But yeah. I had to contribute to the hair story, sorry.
So I was thinking, if you guys go back to earlier episodes in our previous seasons, you might be able to follow this trend.
Oh yeah, just go watch them. There's a different haircut every single episode, I'm sure.
If anyone wants to put a video together, please tag us so we can see all of the trends across the last 3 seasons. Or you might not see them because I think there were several episodes where Nikki was wearing a hat.
That was after a self-inflicted haircut. Yes. If you go way back, like before this figured out that this was this, and this had a feminine haircut, it was intense. It's very intense. There's lots of poof, lots of volume. Maybe I will show you guys a former license on one of these. Maybe I'll show Alyssa, because it was so bad, amazing, good. It was fantastic. It was something that people used to take a photo of my old photo IDs just to have something to make them feel better when their day was not going well.
I actually wouldn't mind a montage of all the different hairstyles. That would be, talk about exposure vulnerability, but that would be pretty cool.
I don't care. I rocked it. But speaking of squirreling, I feel like this went from a topic about impulsivity to my hair. So I'm going to get us back on track. But I would say that is a perfect example of ways in which I really want something and the barber can't get me in for 2 days, so I decided to take it upon myself and just butcher it.
My impulsivity is everywhere, and I try so hard to contain it when I have to, in front of my team, on stage, and we're doing a speaking event.
In front of a camera, on a podcast.
But if you could be in my head, I'm all over the place all the time, and this is what my spouse gets, like, frequently. So the one I can think of is, oh my gosh, there's so many. Which one do I want to talk about? Let's talk about my management role. I have a team whom I manage. I am so bad at delegating. And so for those of you who are really good at delegating, I wonder how much work it took for you to get there, because if it's a natural thing, that's awesome. Because delegating is not natural to me. Why? Because I have a need for immediate gratification. Like, I can feel it in my body right now. And my arm is getting, like, stronger and more tense. I'm like, if I need something done, I need it now. I can't wait 3 hours from now for the website company to get back to me. If I know how to do it, I'm going to do it now.
Oh, I feel you.
And then there's, well, how does that benefit me?
I physically feel that.
Yes. Yes. So for those of you who can relate, you can probably feel the difficulty with pulling that need down enough so because delegation is a beautiful thing if you can do it well, especially if you're in a leadership role. If you don't, then that's going to lead you to burnout if you can't delegate. So I recognize that, but I still struggle with it.
Oh yeah,
I need it done now.
As you were talking about that, our private practice catalyst counseling, we have an IT team, and the other day something needed to be done, and yes, I should have picked up the phone and called the IT team,
whom we pay,
and who has training and degrees and knowledge that I don't have in any way, shape, or form. But if you give me 6 hours, I will figure it out, and I will have felt very productive, even though I could have picked up the phone and they would have fixed it the next day.
I think of ways I try to manage that, and I haven't been successful yet. Not independently, but my spouse will say, just call IT. What? No. Are you kidding me? I needed to know. Just call IT. Just have someone else do it. Why? I could do it.
Yeah,
right now. And I could do it better.
Yeah.
So I think.
Duh. So speaking of that, I can honestly say that that's not accurate. I have had friends reflect to me over the years that I could be a little bit impulsive, distractible. However, maybe I just didn't fully pay attention until I got that feedback from my wife. Now, this came about because it scared her now, let me tell you, like I said, I've never gotten myself into any, legal or financial trouble because of my impulsivity. However, I'm a vehicle person. I really love old vehicles, new, I just enjoy them. It's something that interests me, like sports, right? Like watching the Kings or whatnot. So I talk about them. Well, this combined with the fact that, like my current tattoo, I knew I had wanted it for a very long time. And then one day I made the decision that it was time. So I literally called, but I'm also very picky, right? So I wasn't just going to go to any tattoo shop. So I called as many of the reputable shops within a driving distance that evening that I could find, and found one with a decent artist that would get me in that night, right? So very impulsive types to the outside world, it appears very impulsive. To me, because I've been, tattoo was something I had wanted for 2+ years, it comes across as very impulsive. So when I didn't know this, when I would start talking about the latest truck that just got released or whatnot, and I was talking about it in that excited way, and I was confused as to why it was stressing my wife out. It's like, well, why is this stressing you out? And then she was able to verbalize that she was fearful that this meant that tomorrow I was at some point going to just go down to the dealership and come home with a brand new truck. And okay. And that was the first time I think it was ever presented to me in a way where I had to pay attention to it because it was causing somebody discomfort. Whereas my friends would just kind of laugh hysterically and make jokes about it. In my current relationship, she was like, what is this? So then I had to do a lot of reflection on what is it, right? Because I would never, that's not something I would do, but what would I do? And what does that look like? And same as you, I don't know that I on my own am very good at identifying strategies to manage it myself, and I've had to do a lot of introspection and reflection and bring other people into my support as a tool.
It is an ongoing process if you struggle with inattention or impulsivity, or if you hyper-focus on things. Oh, I'm also a huge procrastinator. I feel like, I don't know how that ties in. Maybe you can help me understand. How does that tie into my impulsivity and inattention? Because I definitely procrastinate.
I'm curious. Is it because I think in myself, the only time I notice it is if I don't have the resources in that moment to do something 110%, then I will put it off. So is it when you don't have things in alignment that you need to be able to kill it that you'll put it off if you know you can't completely nail it? Or you're fearful? Oh, okay. Maybe we should ask your husband.
I don't know that's it. Okay. I know that I excel. I tell myself good. I excel when I stay up till 4 a.m. working on a project that I've had 3 months to do. And maybe it's just a motivation issue. Maybe I just got to work on my motivation.
No, that is not accurate. Not accurate. Motivation is not an issue with this one.
So I don't know what it is, but procrastination is one of them.
What was that you mentioned about some undiagnosed
ADHD? Fairly certain, undiagnosed.
That could explain.
Very certain. And you know what's interesting is I can look at my brother. My brother, I don't think has ever been mentioned on this podcast. So I have 2 brothers. My oldest brother, I sat down. This must have been 3 months ago. We sat down, we had lunch, and he's an entrepreneur too. And we talked about his next steps. And I was like, dang, you kind of suck at waiting. And I know I suck at waiting. He's like, what are you talking about? And we both naturally speak really quickly too. And I was like, well, talk to me about this. And as we're talking, I realized, I'm pretty sure you have ADD or ADHD. And he was like, no, I don't. I was like, well, we come from the same bloodline. And I think I have it. I think there's a high chance that you probably have it because you cannot wait for shit. If there is something that you want, you will make it happen by the end of the day. And if not, you are hyper-focused on that and you avoid everything else until that one thing is done. If it's something that you want to purchase, fix, modify, it's like boom, 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 boom. And when you're living in that, this
Stop talking about me.
He's like 40-something. I was like, this never occurred to you? No, not at all. I was like, you can't even walk normal. Everything you do is at 10 times the pace. Like you walked into the restaurant fucking ready. Like we're literally just having lunch. There's nothing we're doing other than having lunch, but you were in a rush to have lunch.
Yeah.
But when you live in it, you don't recognize it. It's just like you're normal and you feel like you're just being super productive, right? I mean, I feel like I'm being super productive, but probably I'm wasting time.
Mm-hmm. So tools to manage, right? We've got this impulsivity aspect, and then we've also got the delayed gratification aspect. So for me personally, as I have gained awareness, and I am so big on self-awareness, it's not always fun.
Big like you practice it or big like you want to and believe in it?
I don't want to be overly self-assured in saying this, but I feel as though I attempt to practice it regularly.
Okay. So there's an effort.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And it's not always comfortable. You don't always like what you discover, but it is so cool how you can grow from it, right? And I enjoy that process. So for me, let's speak to the impulsivity aspect of it. I have really pulled my wife into this, or friends that I trust, because I recognize that for me, there oftentimes has been a very lengthy internal process where I have thought about this every which way, and then when I make the decision, that is very immediate. But oftentimes this thought process has been inside of my own head and not been vocalized or verbalized to the outside world. It's very abrupt. So I have really roped them in. Roped sounds like they didn't want to. They have volunteered themselves willingly to talk these things through with me. So rather than making an urgent decision, having to sit down and have a conversation about it to kind of really think through whether or not this is in my best. Tattoos is a good benign example. I have many in the works, and there are times when I feel the urge to just go find another artist tonight kind of deal. And Stace, I'm having, I want this now, and she really helps me think through and talk through why waiting for this appointment that I have scheduled out, because you try and get into a good tattoo artist and it's 2 years out. And so talk about delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. This has been a struggle. I've been waiting a year now and we still have 10 months left to get to this appointment. So talk about an exercise in delayed gratification. But yeah, incorporating people that I trust, which I'm big on. We've talked about this in previous episodes. When you're working on something, if you have people in your circle or your life that you can really pull into this and help with the self-reflection or help you talk things through and offer insight.
I would agree. Utilizing your resources around you to talk out loud through it. I'm huge on the reflective process. That's something that we work with organizations on. Why? Because it's something I believe in. Is it hard? Yeah. Because you got to do it all the time. And I was thinking, so we also, if you haven't caught this episode yet, we also interviewed Catherine Inman, and we were talking about how her book, Counting Spoons, was the first book that I have finished this year. We're 6 months into the year, because I have difficulties with starting and finishing a book and starting and finishing a project. So those are the ways my inattention and my impulsivities impacts me. Or I have a difficult time finishing things, and then I've got 6 projects and 6 business ideas that are all coming to fruition, and now my head's split in 6 different places.
It was not until today that I realized how many similarities we have. And I realized this in our pre-episode planning as a team when we were chatting about what we were going to chat about on episode. But we have a lot more similarities than I had initially realized.
And as you're listening, you're probably like, oh, yeah, that's my life. Or you're like, fuck, no, that's not my life. Like, I'm good with delegating.
Yes.
I could wait. So,
or delayed Stacy's like, 10 years for something to happen works for me. I can ease into it. I can really get my mindset around this change that's about to occur.
I'm like, I can't wait. I gotta do something.
No. So in regards to the delayed gratification piece, what can help is breaking it up, right? So if you have, whether it be a project for work, whether it be things you need to accomplish around the house or your own personal goals or working towards something fun, whatever it is, if you can break that up and have some rewards built in along the way, it can go a long ways for those of us that really struggle in waiting until that really far off, very far off.
It really is.
Yeah.
My facial expression just changed watching watching you, because that's how I feel.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it is a tool. My husband always asks me, can it wait until the next meeting? Can it wait until tomorrow? Do you need this right now? And I'm like, fuck.
Because the initial response is, yes, I do. Yes.
And my husband's like, he's a business coach amongst many of the things that he does. And so I'm like, stop fucking coaching me. Get it. I can wait.
Is that how they feel? Like, do you therapize him? Does he say, stop therapizing me? And you're like, stop coaching me? And
yeah.
It's just a thing?
But his coaching actually works really well when he uses it with me, because I'm like, you're right. I can wait. And he's like, can somebody else do it? Yes, it can wait. Someone else can do it. No, I don't need it right now. Ugh. Like, way to burst my bubble.
Okay. So I'm fittingly squirreling here. You know how you'll hear, so as therapists, it is not uncommon to hear people say, stop therapizing me, right? Or you're doing that therapy stuff with me. I would just like to clarify, you're married to a coach, I'm married to a therapist. I love it. Like, therapize me, right? I mean, yes, I should do my own work. I don't mean like putting the burden on. But if you're going through something and you have a skill set, in that example you just provided, Anthony has a skill set that is able to benefit you.
It does.
Right? So why would we not take advantage of the best parts of our people?
You know, we came into this episode with the intention of sharing our own difficulties with this and hopefully to share some tools. And I feel like the only tool that we've shared is use your support around you and reflect.
So if we reflect right now, does that mean that you and I need to do some more work about establishing our tools that we can use separate from our support people?
Yes, because it's not going to go away. If this is so embedded in you, if you have been diagnosed or maybe might meet criteria for ADHD or some piece of that, it doesn't go away. As an adult, you just have to manage it to make sure it's not negatively impacting yourself or your family or your partner or your work. And it is an ongoing reflective process. So I say biggest takeaway tool is ongoing reflection. Yeah. I guess I'll use Anthony's coaching. Do you need it? Do you need it right now? Can it wait? Can somebody else do it? I guess that is what guides my life on a day-to-day basis.
Bam.
Yeah.
There we go. And you mentioned ADHD multiple times. And that's obviously one contributing factor to these kinds of things, impulsivity, delayed gratification. For a while there, as this came to light, I was asking myself, okay, hold on. Did you manage to make it through all of your educational career without recognizing signs of, and I don't think for me personally that's it. So let's talk about how anxiety can impact these things, right? Or even if somebody, you know, I've heard from a lot of people, if they're feeling depressed, that just looking for some happiness and stimulation, right? And wanting that right now. So seeking out, and again, on one end of the spectrum, that can look negative, right? Or it can negatively impact your life. So I think we're speaking more to that middle ground where it's a potential to get out of hand. It also isn't necessarily negatively affecting anything but our own growth. So just monitoring, and I think there's so many different factors that contribute it. So it doesn't mean you have to have other ADHD characteristics or be diagnosed with that, but there's so many factors that contribute to why somebody might have those impulsive tendencies or difficulties with delayed gratification.
As Nikki's talking, something came to mind, and it took me like all of my effort to not interrupt because I knew I would lose it if I waited until she was done. So that was a part of my inattentiveness, but I actually didn't lose it. I do remember.
Okay, let's hear it.
So when Nikki's talking about anxiety or depression, and there's an example that came up with somebody I work with, and I totally know I have her permission to do this. We're going through like ADHD checklist symptoms. And I'm giving what we call psychoeducation. Basically, we're talking about like what it could look like. And she's like, oh my God, am I bipolar? I was like, wait, what? I thought we were talking about. She was like, but she said sometimes it turns into like I hyperfixate on things and I like keep going and going. And I'm like, oh, okay, I could understand how you got that. So we're not talking about the mood disorder piece. I think there's definitely some overlap when we're talking about different diagnoses. But right now we're kind of purely talking about impulsivity.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about diagnoses. We're talking about behaviors, right? And I think especially now with all this information so readily available at your fingertips, there's obvious, whether it be medical or mental health information, all you gotta do is Google, right? Or Yahoo, or use your search engine of choice, and it's all right there. I am one who anytime I have any sort of physical ailment, I want to figure it out, right? Because I want to know. The doctor's going to tell me tomorrow, but I could figure it out on my own right now just from the internet, and it's always cancer. I'm always dying. So speaking of anxiety, but anyhow, with all of this information so readily available, like it's great. It's awesome that it's out there and accessible, but also when it comes unfiltered without a professional's lens, right, or viewpoint, you could look at a checklist for anything and come up with, oh, I've got this for anything, right? So,
and I would say even we're professionals and we're therapists, but we're not your therapist. So please consult with your doctor, consult with your own mental health or health team if you have any questions. Yeah. I also recognize too that you and I feel like you and I are speaking quicker
about this topic.
Episode.
Yes,
because we're like
that.
So
impulsively ready to address it.
This was us unfiltered today in that aspect. If you need to watch this and like have speed, go for it, because I realize we're talking really, really fast. So that is our episode for today. We hope that we have given you some tools. We kind of just shared
I don't even remember what we talked about. Like we're kind of squirreled all over the place, which maybe that's
this
representative.
Episode, yes, it was all about squirreling. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope that this helps make mental health more relatable for you. And subscribe, like, share this podcast with somebody who you think could benefit from it, and check out show notes at www.therapistuncut.com. See you next time.
Thank you for joining Therapists Uncut, a production of AMP Smart Business. To learn more about Therapists Uncut and stay up on upcoming episodes, please subscribe and follow us on social media. As a reminder, although the Therapists Uncut co-hosts are licensed therapists, they are not your therapists. This podcast is not intended to substitute professional mental health counseling. If you need professional therapy, please contact your local provider or primary care provider. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Therapists Uncut.